From the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. Paul Mancano and John Meoli. And John, we are back in Baltimore. We have been for a little bit. Are you going back to Sarasota at any point?
That is the household operations department has taken that into consideration significantly. We just got back from a trip to Chicago this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
The smaller members of the household operations department did fantastically on the plane. I think we're going to. I don't know.
Okay.
Today is the deadline.
That's a factor,
to decide.
though, how they perform on the plane.
Yeah, I mean,
That's fair.
just saying that right now. I don't want to knock on wood because it'd probably sound really weird with the microphones and all the equipment
that
here.
Would not
but we'd probably be taking like a nighttime flight, and that would be difficult to do. But we're gonna go
through it.
That's the idea.
Gotcha.
Once the lights go off, we have a chance of sleep. But
gotcha.
Lights on, no sleep. That's something we learned on car rides too. We'd be like in the summer, we'd be like, oh, we'll leave at 7. That's bedtime, and it's just like daylight.
There's
and
no
you're
shot.
Just driving for like 2 hours.
That's
in the sun. Yeah. So we'll see.
I took a flight over the weekend, and it was about a 3-hour flight, and I was in the new Southwest arrangement. I was gifted a spot in the exit row, and I can only sleep forward on planes. I can't rest backwards. And it was the best sleep I've ever gotten on a plane because I had so much leg room and I could just lean in. It was amazing.
I'm a poor plane sleeper, but I'm glad that you got that.
I'm a notoriously terrible plane sleeper. I mean, usually I'm awful. So this was a godsend. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Especially after a bachelor party.
I thought we were going to have the Southwest conversation, which I don't think we need to.
I don't think we need to either. I've taken a few flights with it so far. The new zoning things. Anybody who flies out of BWI, you've usually taken a lot of Southwest flights because they're like, it's a hub. And I don't know how to make up my mind about it yet. But people didn't come here for our plane takes, did they?
I don't know what they're here for.
I don't know what they're here for either. But we're going to give you our baseball takes, whether you came here for them or not. We are going to talk about some things that we've seen in spring training, and I hesitate to say some things that we've learned from Orioles spring training because it is spring training. Take everything that you see and everything you read with a grain of salt because these games don't matter. They are played on backfields and tiny stadiums in Florida, and they just, you just can't read anything into it. But we'll talk about some things that we have seen. There are 23 days until opening day, John. It's getting into the exciting portion of, the ramp up towards the regular season. Are you getting excited at all to see the gigantic, massive scoreboard, gargantuan, I think we could say, at Camden Yards?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I was talking about, I like to sit undercover with the little ones. And sometimes there's an issue of being able to see the whole scoreboard when you're like under the first. So that may be alleviated right now. But I say this and like, this is probably not going to happen with a scoreboard this big, but I would think back to, when they moved the wall back and it was this whole, everyone's talking about it, writing about it for months and months and months. And then I feel like it took me like 3 hours on that opening day to realize that it was moved and like notice because I wasn't looking for it. And I was like, oh yeah, the wall's in a different place. It looks different out there.
A lot goes on opening day. Yeah. It's hard to keep track of everything.
So all that to say is like, it's probably going to like wash over me, but I will enjoy being able to understand who, to the extent I'm actually listening to it or paying attention, being able to understand the person who is speaking into the microphone in a tuxedo on the field. Yeah,
the improved sound system is perhaps more important in a lot of ways than the improved scoreboard. Let's run through some quick hitters before we kind of dive into some positives and negative signs that we've seen. One, Samuel Basallo's injury scare, I think, stopped everybody's heart when he left Friday's game with right side abdominal discomfort. Came right back over the weekend, had 2 hits on Sunday. He's just fine. I think there was a brief moment where we were all thinking, you know what? Sam Huff is actually going to make this roster, and he's going to make it as a replacement for Samuel Basallo. Good to see that Samuel Basallo is okay. And then another one. What did you think, John, of Craig Albernez's quote-unquote prank on Coby Mayo, sticking him at shortstop for an inning while moving Gunnar Henderson to third base? Gunnar Henderson cut Coby Mayo off for a couple of ground balls, so Mayo didn't ever have to make any plays there. But just to kind of loosen Coby up, he's dealing with a new old position, I guess you could say, at third base, and to kind of give him a break and give him a laugh. What did you think of that?
It was really cool. I think this is part of a broader conversation we're going to have about Coby Mayo. But like, we have spent Birdland. Oh my God! Like Orioles fans have spent so much time talking about Coby Mayo,
that branded turn,
thinking about Coby Mayo, that like you do kind of lose the fact that this is somebody who's trying to do a really hard thing, which is like break into the big leagues. And you know what? There's not a conversation about whether he could play shortstop in the big leagues, but like he did it for an inning in spring training, and it was laughing like what they're doing down there right now. Once games start, they just kind of keep happening, and everyone plays. Some days you don't play, but like it's not the best time at this point.
Yeah.
So I think the idea that was something that they would do feels very unique and different, and honestly, like there's no harm in it, and why bother?
Right. It's literally an inning in a spring training game. I think at first my initial reaction was, what are they even trying here? And then you kind of understand.
Yeah, nothing.
But you understand the context that it's a joke.
Yeah, but that's the thing of like, it's not always, when most things just kind of happen, and when they trade for Blaze Alexander, it's not because they're going to do 5 other things after, it's because they're just trading for Blaze Alexander. Like when they move Coby Mayo short for an inning, it's just, that's what they're doing. And it's, to an extent that it matters. Like if something terrible had happened, would it have mattered? Yeah. Do you think the instructions also came with like, if you feel like you're running into the outfield in a direction you're not normally running and like don't know if you're going to run into the center field, just stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
Like it's not a big deal. Like we will tell the pitcher that's not on them. If you just like decide not to kill someone by running, like by barreling into the center field, like I'm sure that happened too. And it's cool. It's there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. And Gunnar Henderson cutting Coby Mayo off twice at shortstop was probably an indication of Gunnar being like, don't worry, I got this.
Yeah.
We're not going to watch you hurt yourself. This was mostly just a joke.
And truly, like that very well may happen when they're at their
respective
appointed spots too, where like, can Coby Mayo do this and that? It's like Gunnar's just going to do everything. They're going to make Gunnar do everything.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, the good thing is for Coby Mayo, he is hitting remarkably well to start spring training. And again, take all of this with a grain of salt because it's spring training. But Coby Mayo so far, 6 for 12. He's got 2 doubles. He has yet to strike out, which I think is a big thing. 106 strikeouts in 102 big league games so far. John, you hinted at it. It is hard to get to the big leagues. It's incredibly hard. It is even harder to stay in the big leagues. And that is what Coby Mayo is trying to do here. And after an offseason where there was endless trade speculation, he had no idea if he was going to show up to Orioles spring training or another spring training. He now has a real opportunity and a real shot with Jordan Westburg and Jackson Holliday being out to man third base and show that he can do it not only defensively, but perhaps more importantly, show that he can hit in the big leagues, because his value will always come on the offensive side, pretty much no matter where he's playing at third, first, whatever. He is going to have to be an above average hitter. He was throughout his minor league career. He's going to have to do it in the big leagues. So it is nice to see that he is at least starting off on the right foot in Florida.
Yeah. And the thing about Coby Mayo to me has always been that he goes to a level and then, he learns there. His first full season, he ended in Bowie. He spent like a half year there. He was better at the end than he was at the beginning, but it wasn't great overall. And then he went back there and he was one of the best hitters in all the minors. And then he went to Norfolk and he had some adjustments. And then he goes for a full season. He goes home, works on whatever he learned, and adjusts to it, improves. And that was just a gap that didn't happen yet in the big leagues. But it was hard for me to say that somebody who, we're not talking about somebody who's only done one thing ever and like, doesn't make adjustments, and then they get to the big leagues and it's like, wait, what am I supposed to do? I have to change this? Like we've seen those guys exist and they're in that clubhouse, some of them, but Coby Mayo has not been that guy. So that's always been something that I've thought about in terms of, is this going to be like this forever? And I don't think it was going to be. I don't think this says it's not, but there are basically 2 roads you can walk down when you're in a position of being like, well, Coby Mayo, I guess you're going to be the third baseman to start the season. Everything could go terribly in spring and you could feel terrible about it, or everything can go well in spring and you're like, all right, let's see what happens. He could have the spring of his life, which he's had like 3 times now. He's
a great spring training hitter.
Loves the Florida boy, get him and get those Florida boys down in Florida and they're going to hit. he could have a fantastic spring and come up here and be the Coby Mayo of like, be the worst version of himself. Nothing that's happening in Sarasota is going to influence that, like statistically, but if it goes badly, then it becomes a thing that he is not hitting and can even play third. What are we doing here? And the more that this goes well and he's able to continue like without having those conversations happen, that's just a good thing for him in the Orioles.
Yeah. Well, let's alternate good things and bad things, positive and not as positive signs. I hesitate to say bad things. We'll say good and not as good signs. So that's a good one, is Coby Mayo. A not as good one has been Chase McDermott, who started out great. His first couple outings went great. And his last one, not so great. 3 consecutive homers on 3 consecutive pitches in a game against the Atlanta Braves, including one to Chadwick Trump. He was not exactly going up against the most stellar competition. I think everything that you say when it comes to spring training performance has to come with correct context. This was late in the game. This was not exactly against the Braves' top hitters.
Yeah.
This has been a bit of a challenge for Chase McDermott as he has transitioned from a starter role to a reliever role. I'd say when you're looking at the opening day competition, certainly Chase McDermott is on the outside looking in. And he's, I think at this point, kind of fighting for his baseball life because of how things have gone over the past couple years. His ERA has consistently gone up. I think he's been in AAA. If he goes back to AAA, this will be his 4th time getting AAA.
Right.
This is a very important camp so far for Chase McDermott, who turned 27 last August. And so far, the results have been very mixed.
Yeah. And, you can have a bad spring training outing, and like Chase McDermott can be the best pitcher that comes out of the Orioles bullpen for the rest of spring, and his stats will still look like garbage because it's 3 home runs. Like,
right.
His
ERA is screwed.
It's not gonna go well on paper, but you're looking at all the things that Andy wrote about. You're looking at, like, is the velocity there? Is he able to command it? We're talking about somebody who...
Andy Kuska of the Baltimore Banner, where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months.
That's the guy. That's the site. All those things about, what he's doing, because we're not talking about somebody who's ever been like an overpowering guy. He's been a decent stuff mix, but, pitch ability type guy. And what you need to have happen for that to work in the bullpen is you need to be able to still locate your fastball, and you can't leave stuff over the plate, and you need to be able to have like something to miss bats with. And his fastball is not typically the bat missing type, if I'm remembering correctly. I haven't thought about Chase McDermott in a very long time. I haven't seen him pitch in a really long time, but I feel like there's just there are levels to reach regardless of that outing, that it's just, I don't think you can say he's there and that needs to be like, you need to bring him north. But that's just that's a bad day to have a bad day.
Yes. Chase McDermott first reached the AAA level in 2023 when he had a 2.49 ERA in 10 appearances for Norfolk. And you're thinking at that point, this guy could be a potential starter. 2024 in Norfolk, his ERA jumps by more than a run, 3.78. And then 2025, this past year, his ERA was 6.21. They try to use him in the bullpen as well. Comes up, makes one ill-fated start in Baltimore. So a lot is riding on this season in this camp for Chase McDermott. Let's go back to one of the good signs, the positive signs. Let's talk about Kjerstad. 6 for his first 14 with a double, a homer, a walk. When we were down there, John, before the actual game started, I don't want to say actual, before the fakest of fake games, the Grapefruit League games started happening, we were watching live BP, and Kjerstad was consistently barreling up the baseball on the backfields, trying out that new, I would say less exaggerated, the reduced leg kick, taking a smaller step that he worked on in the offseason. He hung out with Jackson Holliday and Jackson Holliday's family at their complex in Oklahoma, talked it over with Matt Holliday. They decided this is something that is going to help his timing. This is something that is going to help him avoid strikeouts and hopefully get him back to the big leagues. This is going to be a fascinating season for Kjerstad. You could lay out any number of possibilities, and I would say, yeah, that's how his season could go. I really have no idea. I mean, the closest player to Kjerstad that I expect to make the initial opening day roster is Dylan Beavers. So if Dylan Beavers goes down, I guess you could say Heston Kjerstad would be his fill-in. But if Tyler O'Neill goes down, is Heston Kjerstad the call? If Taylor Ward goes down, is Heston Kjerstad the call? Or do the Orioles not want to do that because there are still concerns about him defensively and because he bats from the left side? I have no idea how Heston Kjerstad's season is going to go. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
I mean, I do have an idea, and I'm going to say this knowing that it's kind of like a weird comp, but like his season is going to be like Ryan O'Hearn's first season with this team, where like you might not have him on, he might not run down the orange carpet, but you're going to have him play a meaningful part of this team in the season if he's hitting. This is all I am standing under a big tent that says Heston Kjerstad is hitting. Like it's working out. But that is the role that I kind of see for him. Would it be crazy town to say like there's no way to fit him on the opening day roster? It's just, but we're gonna go and we're gonna have him play first base at Norfolk every day.
You think that's coming?
I don't know. I truly don't know. But like, as if this team needs another first baseman.
Exactly. Yeah.
But and like as if Pete Alonso is not going to play first base. I guess the idea of like the Ryan Mountcastle, Ryan O'Hearn platoon was that like they would just take each other's spot
right
in the line. And the sixth inning, like a lefty would come in and Mountcastle would do like it'd be like the Dudley boys, you know, like tag team and come in and like do some tag team moves. But like I don't think Pete Alonso is going to trade that out, but I think they could trade out the DH spot. You know, this team is going to need that. I'm happy to be wrong if I say that they're going to pinch hit and like use that off the bench all the time. So I think that's what Ryan O'Hearn's role was at the beginning, like to come in when they brought in a righty reliever and get a hit. And if Ryan O'Hearn started, Ryan Mountcastle would do that. Like that, this team needs that. They need to have that possibility, and I think Heston Kjerstad can do that. He can also run around in the outfield. I don't think this is something to really worry about, think about. But all the Dylan Beavers center field time that we're getting makes me think that I don't think this is an actual thing, but if you believe enough in Dylan Beavers to play center field in an emergency, then Leody Taveras is a little bit redundant.
Yeah.
Expendable. I mean, you don't want to get rid of that profile, just a switch hitter who can play all over the outfield. I don't think they would, but and again, this world doesn't exist because Heston Kjerstad has at least one option left and you don't have to make a decision. And the easiest decision is to make no decision at all and bring all the players you have to bring north and figure it out when you figure it out. But I just wanted to put that nugget. No, but this is not me. Like, this is not like Brian Windhorst. Like something's going on here in the Orioles outfield. This is not that, but it makes me think that is an unspoken path.
I mean, if Heston Kjerstad's 2026 season with the Orioles goes like Ryan O'Hearn's 2023 season with the Orioles, that'd be a phenomenal outcome. I mean, Ryan O'Hearn, like you said, didn't make the opening day roster in 2023, but ended up playing in 112 games, hit 289 and hit 14 homers, and quickly became overnight a fan favorite because he could play first base. He was a nice spell to Ryan Mountcastle. That was back when Orioles fans liked the platoon, I think, because it was working. And things were going well for the 2023 Orioles. If that is what Heston Kjerstad has in store for 2026, that's a phenomenal outcome for him. It's just funny because we were having this conversation a year ago where you insert Heston Kjerstad into the Dylan Beavers role. And Dylan Beavers has really usurped that role from Heston Kjerstad over the last year because of how poorly Heston Kjerstad's season went and because of how phenomenally Dylan Beavers' 2025 season went. So they have swapped places in a lot of ways. At this point last year, none of us were talking about Dylan Beavers as even maybe a September call-up. We were looking at him as maybe a quad A guy or maybe a trade piece. And right now, he's looking like a surefire thing to make the opening day roster. So how quickly things change, but also that leaves open the door for the possibility that Heston Kjerstad could recapture his form. And I don't think either of us would be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in July, it was a question of like, do you even have to wait to get Dylan Beavers up here with like the PPI stuff? Because he's going to make a top 100 list. And like, here we are. He is all the things happened.
And Heston Kjerstad, by the way, always important to note the context of spring training. The homer came off Jack Flaherty, so that is a legit starting pitcher in the big leagues. And the double came off Ranger Suarez, or Ronher, as I believe is the correct pronunciation that he brought up in his Red Sox press conference. So those are two legitimate high price starting pitchers that he had this production off of. It's not like, AAA guys.
Yeah. We're talking about somebody who, when he makes contact, makes really good contact. And if he has found something in his swing to allow him to make more contact, we're not talking about some swing decision monster. He's not going to light up your swing decision scores. He's not going to win, he's not going to win the I only swung at good pitches competition. There are other guys that do that, but his approach is that he has a very good understanding of how he's going to be pitched. And he says, if this pitch is up here, I'm going to swing at it. If this pitch is here, I'm going to swing at it. And that's what he does. And that only works if it works. But like, we are, again, in the Coby Mayo, like if there's two lanes, it either works or it doesn't. Like right now it's working. And that's good for Heston Kjerstad. That's how I'm ending every thought. That's good for Heston Kjerstad. That's good for Coby. That's like, I'm just we are not landing the plane today.
That's okay. We're still flying it. We're hovering over the airspace. Well, you brought up somebody who would win the plate discipline competition. That would be Dylan Beavers, because the one thing that dude does is he walks. He walked 26 times in 35 big league games last year. He's got elite plate discipline. Kind of odd so far that he has 14 ABs in spring training, has yet to draw a walk. He does have 3 doubles. I'm not saying he's having a bad spring training. Just kind of funny that Dylan Beavers hasn't walked at all. That's his whole calling card.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's, I don't want to say there's reason, but like,
it could also just be random.
Yeah. He could just be trying to swing at stuff. This is the time to do that, I suppose. He might just be getting strikes and swinging at it. He's good at doing that too.
Yeah. Another positive sign, Adley Rutschman hitting his first home run of spring training, hit it off Martin Perez, who is another legitimate big league pitcher on Sunday. We've said it a million times. This team goes as Adley Rutschman goes. Adley Rutschman needs to have a good big league season in order for this team to get where it needs to be. It starts with him being healthy. It starts with him overcoming the oblique injuries that he had last year. He's hoping some of those swing changes that our own Andy Kuska has chronicled will help, especially from the left side of the plate, where he's moving his hands a little bit farther away from his body, trying to keep his bat in the zone for longer. We'll see. We'll see if any of this works. It's hard to read into one home run in spring training, but it is just crucial that Adley Rutschman goes out there and has a good 2026.
Yeah. And I think the thing you can read into it is that, it wasn't the home run that he hit, if I'm remembering the video right, was not him like selling out and like uppercut, like trying to
pull the ball in the air,
ball out of the ballpark. It was like a natural swing, and I don't know what the wind was doing. I don't know what kind of elements you're dealing with. We're also talking about hitting it out to left field at Smith Stadium, which the ball can go far and fly if it gets up in the wind. But like, it felt like the kind of ball that I feel dumb even saying this, but like, it's the type of thing that would have ended up on the warning track in the past couple of years. And if those balls are going out, like, he can hit line drives, but those being home runs naturally is what's going to determine this for him.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about a pair of prospects right now that you could read into their production, however you would like to read into their production. I think the one that is more obvious is Vance Honeycutt, because he has had 3 spring training ABs and he has hit 3 home runs. The other one is Enrique Bradfield Jr., another outfield prospect, a fellow first-round pick by the Baltimore Orioles. He so far has just 1 hit with 2 walks in 9 spring training ABs. And John, this is a pair of first-round picks in Vance Honeycutt and Enrique Bradfield Jr. that represent kind of different first-round picks for the Orioles. When the Orioles were drafting under Mike Elias near the top of the draft, they were going through for some experienced big league college hitters who had very good bat-to-ball skills, who had good power numbers. It was easy to get those kind of guys because you were drafting near the top of the draft. I mean, Colton Cowser checked a gazillion boxes because he was a top 5 pick. I mean, Heston Kjerstad boasted immense power potential and very good back to ball skills because he was the number 2 overall pick. Adley Rutschman checked just about every box. These are two guys where they were drafted in the middle of the first round. And when you're drafting in the middle of the first round, you have to sacrifice something. Not everybody is going to be a perfect prospect by the time they get to you. With Enrique Bradfield Jr., it was the defense is elite. The speed is otherworldly. The plate discipline is awesome. The power is not there. He is going to hit for contact. He is not going to hit the ball over the fence. But can the rest of the tools combine to give you a productive big league center fielder? And for Vance Honeycutt, coming out of UNC, it was the power is elite. The defense is also elite. The speed is very good as well. But the bat to ball skills are really concerning. And the whiffs are really concerning. So far in their big league careers, to varying degrees of success, we've seen that play out with both Vance Honeycutt and Enrique Bradfield Jr. And now we're just kind of the average fan who maybe read a headline, saw an interview when either of these guys was drafted, but hasn't seen them play in Aberdeen or Delmarva or Bowie. They're getting a taste of it because this is their first introduction to these guys. But I feel like we haven't really learned as much about Enrique Bradfield and Vance Honeycutt because their strengths are the same, but their weaknesses are also the same.
Yeah. And this is just an extension of, I guess, the conversations that you have when you're talking about and writing about and learning about these guys. And it's just simplified now. It's simplified now. When we talk about Enrique Bradfield Jr., is he going to hit? It's not about, is he going to hit for enough power? It's about, is he going to hit the ball hard enough that it's going to get through the infield? Because you can hit the ball on the ground through the infield in the minors at the lower levels. At AA, AAA, that gets harder. The Orioles' main goal with Enrique Bradfield Jr. has been to have him elevate the ball and hit line drives over the infield because that is the surest way to get hits. We're not talking about his career will not be made or broken by whether he hits 2 home runs in a season or 1 home run or 4 home runs in a season. Like, that is a pejorative sentence, but that is not meant to be. There's nothing wrong with that. Is he going to be able to make good enough contact? Because he makes great contact at some point. Like, I guess would have been 2 years ago I think they were Bowie then. I don't really remember when this happened. In AA, he was basically told, like, if you are swinging at a pitch, make sure you're willing to end your at bat on it because you're going to make contact. And if you make weak contact at this level, like, yes, you're fast and you still might not get on base. And once you go to AAA, that same ball will be a hit less frequently. And once you're in the big leagues, it will be a hit even less frequently. So be willing to end your at bat on the pitch that you are swinging at, and try to focus that on balls that you can elevate because that is what the game is. So we're trying to judge, somebody on a small sample, and he does all the things he does well, really well. And there's myriad evidence that you can be a good big leaguer doing the things that he does well. Well, it's not about what his slugging percentage is. It's that you won't even have a high I don't want to say batting average. Like, you won't get on base enough if you don't hit the ball hard enough.
Yeah.
And hit the ball. It's like a quality of contact issue. So to the extent that's what's happening in spring training now, I don't know, but it's just a conversation that's worth clarifying because there's so much, it needs to be reductive, I suppose, and like described in, the most basic terms possible, but it's challenging because this is also somebody who's working incredibly hard and who is undoubtedly 100% getting better at the things that they're asking him to do. If you go to his Fangraphs page, which is what I do, I scroll down when I go to, like, when I'm checking in on players, like, I scroll down, like, I don't really care what his OPS or whatever is like, I just look at what his ground ball rate is. If it's lower than it was the year before, if it's going in the right direction, then he's going in the right direction. That's what we're talking about with him. And that's the kind of conversation that, that's just not really something that like shines through in spring training.
Right.
Because he might have 4 batted balls and they might all be on the ground.
And for fans that are following the back of the baseball card stats, 264 minor league average, 369 OBP, 7 home runs, 728 OPS, and 135 stolen bases in 209 career minor league games for Enrique Bradfield Jr. So 7 home runs in 209 games compared to 135 stolen bases. His strengths are such incredible strengths. His weakness is such a glaring weakness. Yeah. And that's what makes him a polarizing prospect. I mean, that's what makes him a debate topic, not just amongst outsiders, but amongst scouts and people who evaluate this stuff.
Yeah. And I will say, it's not to interrupt, like both of these picks were considered like heat check picks. Like when I talk to people on the outside, they're like, this is an Orioles team in 2023 and 2024 that they were literally on a heater, and like all these dudes they drafted, like granted they're drafting high, but they also got them all to the big leagues like really fast. They ended up having a bunch of all-stars that they drafted, and a lineup that was really good. And people looked at these picks, they're like, it's like you're two sides of the same coin. It's like, oh my God, look at these guys. Like they think they can do anything. And the other side of that coin is like, man, if they could do this, like they're really as good as, and I'm not saying this like the other people, the people I'm talking to are like, if they can do this, they're really as good as I think they are.
Right.
Like, and not me. This is like other people who are like, man, they're like, Dylan Beavers kind of this kind of pick too, where it's just like, yeah, like if anybody could do this, they can. Like Joey Ortiz, guys who have something, whatever that, I wish I knew the name of it. I reference it all the time. It's like those like kind of like star plots, or like it's like you can just have the one part that's not as far out, and like
the spider graph.
Yeah.
Those are big at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, they just kind of they are good at rounding that out, and I would say that they're better at the contact, add some juice version of that than like a lot of juice. Let's make some contact for that. But that's part of the reason, as you mentioned, Van Honeycutt, why you keep him alive. I think he's higher on the Baseball America list now that the Orioles have traded a bunch of guys. I don't think he was on the pipeline one that came out yesterday, which is interesting because, you don't put him on there because he has 3 spring training home runs, but you keep him alive because if there's even a little bit of contact and like a little bit of improvement, everything else is so good that they're talking about a player.
Right. Vance Honeycutt with those 3 home runs so far this spring, he's only 2 away from the total he had in all of minor league baseball last season. Last year, he played in 101 games for High A Aberdeen and hit just 5 home runs. The power potential is there.
Yeah,
it absolutely is. He hit 28 home runs in his final season at North Carolina. The question is he going to put the bat on the ball enough for the ball to leave the yard? Because he hit just 171 last year in those 101 games for Aberdeen. The OPS was under 560. The speed is remarkable. He had 32 stolen bases last year. The outfield defense is ridiculous. Another guy who could win a Gold Glove if he gets to the big leagues in center field.
Yeah.
The question is he going to make solid enough? Is he going to make enough contact to the point where he can drive the ball over that he can access his strength? And it's another questioning, polarizing guy. And John, you asked the question. You said, when Bradfield was drafted and Honeycutt was drafted, people were saying, wow, well, if they can do this, then they can do anything. As in, if they can make these guys into good big league players, then they can do anything. We still don't know. And we certainly, obviously, Enrique Bradfield Jr. is much farther along the line. He's going to start this season in AAA. I think there's a very good chance that if he stays healthy, which he struggled to stay healthy last year, and is productive, that he could be a September call-up. He's kind of an ideal September call-up because he brings speed and defense. And when you add 2 roster spots, you could say, hey, let's just add another outfielder who could be a great pinch runner if we're in a situation where we need that guy. So he could be a September call-up. Vance Honeycutt is much, much farther away from the big leagues. He's going to be 23 this season, but probably going to AA, I would think, to start the season, or maybe back to High A. You think back to High A Aberdeen? Or sorry, Frederick now.
I think that if that's actually, I've kind of just assumed he's going back to High A, because if whatever has happened in the offseason for him is real, then you just let him go and
You need him to prove it back at that level?
You don't need him to prove it. Like if they really in their hearts think that he doesn't need to go back there, I'm sure they wouldn't send him there. But like, if you think I would have such a high threshold of doing that, like if you're even 90% sure that it's real, the worst thing that can happen is you go and have him hit like 10 home runs and
call him up in a week.
Yeah. Like you just have him go and like hit the cover off the ball for 3 series and then you move them up. Like
it's always better to send them to the lower level and have them mash.
They're not, this is like the Creed Willems like trajectory where he would go somewhere and not be as good as you would hope he would be. And then he would go back for a month and be awesome. And then he would get promoted and he would scuffle for 5 months and he would figure out that's why I said about Coby Mayo. Creed has had that same career and like, there's nothing wrong with it. He's in big league camp and like, he's going to be in the big leagues at some point. So I'm fascinated to see. It's just, I wish that I'm hoping to dive into this at some point because doing all the Baseball America calls, like every single person you talk to wanted to talk about Vance Honeycutt and also had their own idea as to what was going on. And why his season went the way that it did. So I don't know what the low hanging fruit was. I just know that like somebody needs to get up in that tree and do some stuff because like there was a lot of fruit on there.
Right. And I think the Honeycutt conversation is also interesting because of his context in the draft class that he was taken in that 2024 draft class by the Baltimore Orioles. Yeah. He was the first pick in that draft. The 32nd overall pick was infielder Griff O'Farrell, who so far through 141 minor league games has a 625 OPS. He has not been what the Orioles have hoped so far. The 61st overall pick was catcher Ethan Anderson, who's got a 700 OPS in 109 minor league games. He's a catcher. Obviously, you're not looking as much at high OPS, high production numbers. You're also looking at defense as well. He has been in big league camp doing a little bit. And then 97th overall pick was Austin Overn, who was part of the Shane Baz deal, the outfielder who was part of that massive deal to get Baz from the Rays. Are there any other kind of guys that I'm missing there? Because so far I'm looking at the results of that draft class and they have not been as fruitful as other Orioles draft classes.
The first day for sure. I mean, Nate George is an absolute dude
at the bottom of the very end of the draft.
At the bottom of the draft. And that makes up for, not makes up for
18th round pick.
Yeah, 16th round pick.
16th round.
And pretty nailed on to be their top prospect within like a month when all these guys graduate. I guess it depends. I think actually Trey Gibson's a little ahead of him. But, I think, we had this conversation when we were talking about the 2023 draft as well. And I think it's useful to remember as we're talking about, all of a sudden like Nestor Herman, Trey Gibson, Levi Wells are all popping. And is that we don't get a full picture really of like, I feel like the pitching success of these drafts until the second full year. So guys like Sebastian Gongoras, guys like Carson Dorsey, a couple of interesting lefties that got to Aberdeen last year. I think Carson Dorsey got to Aberdeen. I don't remember. I'm not gonna.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Paul. I went to see Sebastian Gongora pitch, and then he got hit with a line drive in the head in like the first inning. So I saw some pitches, and he ended up being okay. But
Carson Dorsey reached single A Del Mar.
Okay, so he was in Del Mar most
17th round pick.
So those are the types of guys on the pitching side. I think Andrew Tess, high school catcher, is also kind of an interesting guy in this context. But all of this is to say that Nate George cures a lot of ills.
Single-handedly saved this draft class.
Yes. Austin Overn was a part of the Shane Baz deal, and he was probably the best of those early guys. I mean, the best performer. I don't know. I mean, honestly, very redundant when Nate George is also in your organization because there's some sameness there. But in the same way that the 2023 draft class if we were having this conversation this time last year, it would have been a stretch. You would have been looking at me thinking I was being a little crazy if I was like, this is going to have a bunch of dudes in this draft class who are going to maybe be in the big leagues next year. You would have wondered who I was talking about because you could have said Enrique Bradfield Jr. and they traded a bunch of other guys, but like then you're talking about Trey Gibson and Nestor Herman and Levi Wells. And I think that's an important kind of distinction to make with this draft class. Not to say that it's, awesome, but it's definitely awesome to have Nate George.
Yeah, definitely great when you take a high schooler in the 16th round and he turns out to be one of your best prospects.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're talking about somebody who can really have one of those like this guy is a real guy seasons.
Yeah. All right. You mentioned a couple of the pitchers that are there in spring training right now. Seen some good, some bad, and again, sample size is absolutely tiny. This list of guys of Orioles pitching prospects has not allowed an earned run. None of them have. Nestor Herman, Cameron Weston, Anthony Nunez, Alex Pham, Cameron Foster, all having very good spring trainings. Not as good, Levi Wells, Trey Gibson, Micah Ashman have combined to allow 8 earned runs. Take it all for a grain of salt. That's kind of what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think outside of Anthony Nunez, we're not talking about anybody. And I guess Cam Foster, maybe. He's on the roster, so he's got a chance.
Right. Added to the 40-man.
I don't think we're talking about anyone who's going to make the team, but I think you're talking about valuable experiences, getting them used to what it's like to work with this pitching group and kind of let that next wave kind of get their toes in the water. I talked to Cade Povich about working with this pitching group and he mentioned like his first spring training. It was also theirs, I believe, because that would be in 2023. Where 2024, Drew French came in. And you just start, you're starting to get to know each other, but like now they have recommendations and things that you're just building the trust. You're just building a relationship. So if these guys end up having like, not the best spring trainings and they're out of camp in 2 weeks, they're going to be able to build on that. Not just what they learned, like whatever. They're not, their plans are their plans, but it will pay off for the Orioles down the line to have had them working in the environments they are.
For sure. All right. That just about does it for our list of positives and not so positive signs from Orioles spring training. As mentioned, 23 days away from the start of the regular season. The Orioles had an off day yesterday, and then they play the Netherlands today at 1:00. Doesn't feel fair that they're playing an entire country, but World Baseball Classic is heating up. We're going to see Gunnar Henderson, Rico Garcia, some other guys, Enrique Bradfield Jr. in the World Baseball Classic as well, John. And we're going to continue to cover Orioles spring training. Andy Kuska, I think, has come back up to Maryland for a brief respite. In his place is columnist Kyle Goon. And we'll keep you covered on thebanner.com.
Yeah. I need to shout out Hayes Gardner.
Oh, the great Hayes Gardner, who has made an appearance on this podcast before.
Yeah. You guys, an award-winning multimedia package.
Yes, I believe.
Not for that. We're talking about different things. You guys are awarded. There was a lot of awards going around. Hayes was an award in my heart.
APS.
Longtime listeners will know that I've been in pursuit of a Baltimore Banner sweatshirt. That was the 2024 Christmas gift. Hayes just gave me his. It's been sitting on his desk since then. Nice. That was really nice.
He said he's like never worn it.
Yeah. It's not even a test to see if the person that lives in my household is listening when I do it at the end of the podcast, but she's going to be thrilled that I have another sweatshirt.
I mean, you could wear it on the next podcast just to show it off. But this also, you're neglecting to inform people that you already had a Banner sweatshirt. I saw you in spring training wearing a Banner sweatshirt, and I said, why have you been complaining so much when you have a sweatshirt? And you said, well, I won that from fantasy football.
I like the one that was given, and I think out of principle,
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, also, what if I didn't win the 2023 fantasy football league?
Living in
what if I didn't win?
That's
I'm glad that I did because honestly, like it allows me to not care about fantasy football for the rest of my life because I won a fantasy football league for the first time since like I was in middle school. But
wow, I'm happy that you did because it just means the Kyle Goon didn't win that year, which I believe he won the next year or something.
I don't believe he was in the mix at that point, but he might have been. I don't remember.
This is a test to see if Kyle Goon's listening to the podcast too. To see if he gets to this point.
Who else should we test? Who else? Who do we got?
That's a great question.
Let's see. I don't actually have
are
anyone
Tony
else.
Kemp and Craig Kimbrell's representatives listening to this podcast here if we're going to slander them again?
I mean, honestly, there has to be a service that like these agencies, not honestly, like we would have heard about it.
I think AI is scanning all these podcasts.
We would have heard about it if there was somebody in Jorge Mateo's camp that was listening to these podcasts. But all the way till the end, I still got like a nice head nod from him. So
Nice.
I hope he
breaks camp with Atlanta.
Both he and Tony Mansolino are rescued by the Braves.
That's true.
What an insane thing to say.
That was pretty crazy. All right, that just about does it for the Banner Baseball Show. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Write us a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. For John Meoli, I'm Paul Mancano. We'll have another episode for you some point next week. In the meantime, have a good one.